What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. This will be my final video before the NFL draft. I'm traveling a bit, working on some things on the site. So I will see you guys next on May 2nd, and then we will have a full off-season content schedule starting May 9th. So very excited for all of that to begin. But before that, we have one more video. We're going to take a look at the NFC West, going over the biggest off-season moves in that division. So we'll start things off with the Arizona Cardinals. Their biggest moves have been in the players that they've lost. I would say Chase Edmonds leaving, Christian Kirk leaving. Those are really the biggest changes to the offense. So far, they haven't really filled those spots, but they're going to, right? So this isn't a situation where these guys are gone and no one's going to fill that void. Just because Chase Edmonds is gone, and right now, in mid-April, James Conner is a featured running back, that doesn't mean they're not going to draft someone. That doesn't mean if no one becomes a value when they're drafting, that in free agency, when someone gets cut, they're not going to bring someone else in. I would be very, very surprised if we see James Conner as the only running back and then Eno Benjamin behind him. I don't think they want Eno Benjamin to be their number 2 to enter the season. I will say at times they've been very positive in talking about Eno Benjamin, so maybe that is in their plans, or maybe they're okay, let's give him a chance. If it doesn't work out this summer, we'll go to someone else. But I'm pretty positive they're going to end up drafting a running back that won't compete with James Conner. James Conner is going to be the early down back. He's going to be the goal line back. But someone that's capable in the receiving game, maybe just to kind of replace Chase Edmonds, right? So I think that's going to happen. They also haven't really replaced Christian Kirk. They don't necessarily need to, right? Obviously, they've got a fantastic alpha in Hopkins. I think that Rondale Moore is going to take a step forward this season. I don't think that he's going to, It's tough to say exactly what his role is going to be, but I think that he's basically going to do more of what he did last season. They're just going to involve him more. So more screen passes, more end arounds. I don't think that means that he goes out there and he's commanding a consistent target share. I think it's really more designed plays for Rondale Moore. But regardless, if they're designing some plays to him, they're utilizing the running backs, they're peppering targets into DeAndre Hopkins, they don't necessarily need someone to step up and really fill the Christian Kirk role. But I think they're still going to look at their depth chart and be okay, behind those two, we have AJ Green, we have Wesley, we have Andy Isabella. That is probably not enough talent, especially what if we see another situation? Hopkins gets hurt or AJ Green gets hurt. Some of these guys get injured. There's no depth there. So they're going to go out. They're going to draft a wide receiver. I don't know how early. That's something we're going to have to just wait and see on. Yeah, that's kind of the moves there. The other big, situation, not really a move, is the Kyler Murray contract situation. As of recording this, at least, that has not been resolved. But let's be honest. If you're the Cardinals, you're going to get the deal done, right? They're not going to wait for Kyler Murray to hold out. They're not going to wait and be nope, we're not paying you long term. There's eventually going to be a deal here. I believe, I truly do believe both sides want this long term. I do think Kyler wants to stay. So we're just going to have to wait and see when the contract is finalized. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be worried about this. If you're drafting in Dynasty, don't worry about it. If you're drafting really early in best ball leagues or really early redraft league for some reason right now, I would kind of just think this is irrelevant. He's going to get the deal done. He's going to be there long term. It's going to be okay. I wouldn't worry about it, but I just wanted to mention it because that's the other thing there. In terms of these guys' value, I think James Conner is probably the one that's most up to changing, just because, I said, I think they're going to draft a running back, but I have no idea if that's going to be really early, really late, if that's going to be a pure pass catching specialist or someone that could just compete with him for also an early down role. So I think his value is really going to fluctuate depending on what they do in the draft and in free agency after that. Hopkins, probably either way, is going to be a second or third round pick. I don't think much can possibly change his value. We know Kyler's going to be a top 5 quarterback. We know Ertz is going to be a low-end one. So we kind of have a general idea of all these guys. I think it's Rondale Moore is kind of like James Conner in that we don't really know yet, just because I don't know what the public's going to do, and then also that draft pick, right? If they spend an earlier pick at wide receiver, of course Rondale Moore takes a little bit of a step back. If they don't really draft anyone of an elite talent level, Rondale Moore's going to go up. But then it's how hyped does he get, right? People really like Rondale Moore. People want him to succeed. He's a fun player. We want to have him on our fantasy teams. Does he get hyped into like the 6th or 7th round? And then maybe it's a little bit too early. Does he kind of slip back more into like the 8th, 9th, 10th round? I don't know. It's going to be fun when we start doing these mock drafts, these underdog drafts in May, and kind of drafting with you guys and seeing where you guys are valuing him. But I don't know. I really don't know where Rondale Moore is going to go from the public. And so we'll just see what that is, see what they do in the draft, and we will adjust from there. Next up, we've got the Los Angeles Rams coming off their Super Bowl win. Their biggest move for like fantasy has been signing our boy, Allen Robinson, coming off a horrendous season. But he's still our boy. I still like Allen Robinson as a player. And hey, this is going to be easily the best quarterback he's had throwing him the football. So hopefully he can have a phenomenal season. They, of course, trade away Robert Woods. They have, I guess they don't have, but they have like Odell in like the back pocket of like, we want you to return. So still a lot of moving pieces as far as the wide receiver core is concerned for the Rams. Of course, Cooper Kupp won. It's going to be Allen Robinson too. Then again, Woods gone. He's on the Titans now after he tore his ACL. And then Odell coming off the torn ACL. Odell's a free agent, though. He can sign wherever he wants. Reports are that numerous teams are interested in him. Like, he looked good. He looked really, really good last season. Was probably going to go nuclear in the Super Bowl had he not been injured. And so I think that he's basically just going to weigh what teams are willing to give him a long-term contract, like what teams are willing to say, hey, like you are, a really big part of this offense when you're back, and then what teams can win. Obviously, Odell wants a chance to win another Super Bowl and maybe be a bigger part of that championship game, right? He wants to play in the Super Bowl again, so he's got to weigh all these factors. I have no idea where he's going to go, but I do think it's certainly possible he returns to the Rams, and that's going to have an impact on the value of Allen Robinson, not really of Cooper Kupp. His value is kind of going to stay the same no matter what happens. But we just need to note he tore his ACL at like the worst possible timing for the next season, right? Really, really late in the season, the latest game you can possibly have. And so that recovery is going to be longer than, every other receiver that's coming off the torn ACL. And also, he's older, right? He's an older wide receiver at this point. We typically don't care for receivers coming off a torn ACL when they're under like 25 years old. We generally assume they're going to be fine, right? They're going to be okay off the injury. Odell is not 25 years old, and so maybe the recovery doesn't go perfectly, but he's also an incredible athlete, so he could be perfectly fine coming off it. Again, we don't know at this point, and so that's a situation that we're definitely going to have to track. Other than that, the offense is, pretty much the same. I'd say the biggest battle is between Cam Akers and Henderson, right? Who's going to be their lead back this season? What's the split going to be like? That's something we're going to find out over the offseason, right? Over the summer and through training camp. It has always seemed like they want this to be Cam Akers' job, but he looked horrible, right? Coming off the Achilles last season, and that's a brutal injury. That takes players, multiple seasons if they ever really truly recover from the injury, and so that's a big question mark. Does he look better than he did to close the season, or is this just like the new Cam Akers? The dude's going to average like 3 yards per carry. He's going to be inefficient. That's not someone they're going to be featuring in the offense, right? Maybe he just returned. He definitely returned too early, right? But maybe he just returned too early. He was still working his way back, going to gain more explosiveness over the summer into the season, and then it'll be clear this is Akers' job, right? Maybe that happens. But it is also possible that like he is just not going to get back to what he was for another year, even two after this. We don't know. All we know is that this is a very difficult injury to recover from because you lose so much of your explosiveness, and that's so important for running back. So that is a situation we really need to watch because the lead running back on, an elite offense is a very, very valuable piece of fantasy. We want to be sure we're right in that situation. So that's something we absolutely need to watch over the summer, but it's something we can't really determine right now. Next up, Seattle Seahawks, who are in for a massive quarterback downgrade this season after trading away Russell Wilson. As of right now, the quarterback is Drew Lock. I just can't envision a scenario where they walk into the season with Drew Lock as their quarterback and they're expecting to win. Now, if they are going full tank mode, that's fine. Use Drew Lock. That'll help you tank. But if they're actually trying to make the playoffs, you cannot have Drew Lock as your starting quarterback. So I certainly hope for like the value of everyone on that team that they do go a different direction, whether that's Garoppolo, whether that is Baker, whether that's through the draft. I don't know at this point. But yeah, I mean, I hope for everyone's sake, especially like Metcalf and Lockett, that they go a different direction. Again, I'm not sure what their plans are though. Like, it seems like their plan is to try and still win, right? Because they haven't been listening to trade offers for Metcalf, right? And so it's like, if you're looking at this from their perspective, if they're not trying to win right now, they're gonna be in tank mode. Why not trade Metcalf? Maybe you go from like 5 wins to 4 wins. I don't even know if that would happen, but like maybe you lose 1 win. All that happens is you gain the value in losing Metcalf from like the draft capital. You gain value from like your own picks from doing worse, and you start to rebuild. But it'd be really, really weird for them to be like, no, we got to keep Metcalf, to throw Drew Lock out there, to win like 4 or 5 games, to get nothing of value from Metcalf besides being on your team when you're terrible, to not be the worst team in the league maybe because you weren't like bad enough to get that high pick. Like it's a weird situation. So we're going to see. I do think they want to win, and so I think they're going to bring in a quarterback, and that the downgrade from Wilson to that quarterback will still be massive, but it won't be as massive as Drew Lock, right? Because Drew Lock is just simply not a good quarterback. So that's kind of my take on this situation right now. Maybe it's Jimmy G again. Maybe it's Baker. I don't know, but we're going to have to wait and see on that one. I didn't really mention Noah Fant before. My big thing with this offense is like, if we were looking at it with Russell Wilson, right, and we were saying Lockett's inconsistent but has obviously a monster ceiling. Metcalf, I would say more consistent, but also a monster ceiling, but like his ceiling is also less than people assume sometimes. Like his nuclear games are typically not like 12, 13 receptions. It's like, oh, he caught 4 for 122 touchdowns, right? So if you're looking at that and you're saying that's with Russell Wilson, right? And then there weren't that many pieces behind them. If we're going down to potentially Drew Lock, but even like Baker, how good is this offense really going to be, right? Because you're taking a step down from everyone. So it's like, yes, you can be excited about the talent for Noah Fant, but unless they're bringing someone in who's relatively close to Russell Wilson, that wasn't even a valuable spot before. When they had other like decent talents, what makes us think it's going to be super valuable now? So I'm probably going to be lower than most people on this offense entirely just because I think Wilson was a fantastic quarterback, put in a really tough spot at times, and a much lesser quarterback is also not going to produce high-end numbers for some of the players around them. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not saying that like Metcalf and Lockett were bad, it's just that they had Wilson, right? Now, even though they're great talents, if they're playing with Drew Lock, they're not going to post fantastic numbers. So big downgrade overall for everyone in the offense. Hopefully we can get Rashad Penny as like a featured back this season. But let's be honest, I've been burned so many times by Penny that like I don't know how much confidence I can ever put into a take for him. Final team in the NFC West is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. There weren't necessarily, like their biggest move wasn't like a move. It's a move they're going to have to make, or a decision they're going to have to make, right, with Jimmy Garoppolo, like I was just talking about. It's been pretty public that like Trey Lance is going to be the quarterback from this point on. And so that kind of leaves them in a weird spot because like they still have Garoppolo, right? And if they are trying to win with Trey Lance, you win with young quarterbacks because you're able to take advantage of that contract, right? They're on a rookie deal. You're barely paying them anything. You can pay other position players, and you can go for it, right? You can't keep Garoppolo on the team when that's happening. Also, it just creates like a weird scenario. That's kind of why you saw like Mac Jones and Cam Newton last season. It just creates a weird locker room situation when you've got 2 guys, especially with one of them being young, who everyone knows is the future, kind of fighting for that role. You don't really want that. So if you've kind of decided that Trey Lance is your guy, you don't want to keep Garoppolo on the team because it just creates a weird dynamic in the locker room, right? You just want this to be Trey Lance's team. You don't want there to be any questions about it. And also, what are you doing? Like, if you can get like a decent market, right? I mean, there's plenty of teams that need a ton of help at the quarterback position. Obviously, they're going to be very, very willing to give up a lot for Garoppolo. I'm not saying anyone's giving up a first-round pick, but you can get pretty good draft capital for him while you're leaving him on the bench, right? If you're trying to win, again, get that draft capital, do something with it. So I don't think he's going to be there. I think we're going to see the new era of Trey Lance in this offense, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be a run-first offense. They're going to use a lot of play action. They're going to use a lot of like designed runs, RPOs, It can be very, very fun to watch. I think that his ability as a runner unlocks a lot in this offense, but I will say his ability as a runner also limits the upside of Debo. Well, it's tough to say limits the upside of Debo because he's such a new mold of wide receiver with that rushing ability, but it limits the upside of like Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk from like a pass catching perspective, because if they're using designed runs, or there's just necessarily plays that are not passing, right? And we know this team is willing and wants to run the ball 40 times a game, or at least wants to like hit it, right? It's like fun for them to try and hit 40 rush attempts. Well, you don't really want the pass catchers on teams to do that, especially with young quarterbacks who, didn't look that fantastic last season. Like, I was excited for him in fantasy, and he crushed it whenever he was playing in fantasy because he can run so much. But for like fantasy, the other players around him, if he's going to run for like 70 yards per game and they're going to run the ball a ton with other running backs outside of just Trey Lance, it limits the upside of everyone else. So we need to be cognizant of that. We're still going to like them in Underdog, like stacking up this team, but we need to understand that if this is a huge like run first offense with a mobile quarterback, we do need to downgrade the pass catchers. And it's also certainly possible that people draft Deebo Samuel a little bit earlier than they should this season just because of how dominant he was last season. So we will see. I want to see where the ADPs are of everyone in this offense. Does Kittle stay as like a third-round pick, or does he get pushed into the fourth or fifth round, right? Is Deebo hyped up into the first round, or does he kind of stay in the second round where it would be a really good value to get him in the second round? Where's Ayuk, right? Everyone was off on Ayuk after his like horrible start last season, but then he put up pretty decent numbers to close the season. So where do people kind of have him? It'll be very interesting to see. Again, we'll be back in May to kind of like take a look at those things, right? We'll be taking a look at different draft decisions. We're doing mock drafts, live Underdog drafts, draft strategy videos where we're talking about different research projects I've done. All of that starting May 2nd when we get back into the in-season content. Remember, also, there is a discount code going. It's possible I do not post another video before the end of April. So remember, you can get 20% off any package on the site before the beginning of May using promo code FFA. That will not extend if you forget after that point. A lot of content's already up, especially best ball, dynasty content, draft strategy articles, all that already available right now. And of course, the rankings are going to be posted shortly after the draft. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.